Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Ethereum, and we're going to be talking about the most recent move back up to the upside and where it stacks up relative to moves we've seen in the past. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Now, I just want to briefly remind people we are launching the second NFT. It has launched, in fact. If you want to go pick one up, it's called No Retreat, No Surrender. It's the Bitcoin army versus the ETH army. And there are a lot of Ethereum, there are a lot of people that are very pro Ethereum that would like to see Ethereum overtake Bitcoin, flip it by market capitalization. We'll continue to observe if that becomes a possibility maybe later on this market cycle. But if you want to go pick one up, we'll have it down in the description below. If you get this one and the other one that we launched a couple days ago, then on May 3rd, you can claim a third NFT for free. Now, we need to talk about what Ethereum has done here over the last day or so. First of all, if you are feeling euphoric over a $3,000 ETH, then you probably need to go take a cold shower, to be completely honest. Because, we've said this before, right? I mean, Ethereum has been between $2,000 and $4,000 for basically the last year. And there really is no reason to get excited about a 3K ETH. Just a few weeks ago, this would have been considered the doom price, So let us be pragmatic. I would say do not schedule your Forbes interview just yet. We do know Ethereum has quite a long way to go. Now, currently, Ethereum is coming in at a very modest $2,999.43. But one of the things we've discussed before is talking about this Ethereum move through the lens of what we experienced in the past. And I said we're going to walk through this every step of the way, so that's exactly what we're going to do until proven otherwise. Now, I'm not someone that thinks fractals have to play out exactly. Believe me, I don't. But what I do think is that Ethereum is unlikely to spend a year or more between $2,000 and $4,000 just to throw it all away. So that is what I think, and because I think that, I'm going to explain, prior moves to show, okay, well, this is what we experienced in the past. People thought it was going to go down then too, and it didn't, and then it surprised everyone. Okay, so, and even myself back then, okay, and I learned a lesson. Okay, we'll talk about that. So this is, obviously this is the move we've talked about at length before, and basically the idea is that Ethereum is theoretically in this sort of move where you have an impulsive move off of the bear market bottom, right? You have some type of impulsive move there, and then you go sideways for the better part of a year, and then you can ultimately break out to the upside, right? That's the idea. And what you'll notice is that this move that we had earlier on in the first cycle was more explosive than the one we're currently dealing with, at least initially. Okay, so we more or less got to the same place. Maybe this one went a little bit higher when compared to this first impulsive move, but this one got there a lot quicker. Okay, and arguably, if you want to take it from here, you can see where it would have stacked up, or if you just take it from the March capitulation of 2020, you can see where it would stack up as well. So when you look at this, I have to look at this and say, well, if we sort of just move this initial spike to correspond with the spike that we experienced, they are almost identical moves, right? I'm not saying that they have to play out the same way, and we also know that they haven't played out the same way. But in a lot of respects, they have, right? You have this first initial top, you have a move down to the bottom of the range, okay? Then you have a subsequent move to the top of the range. We can see right here. And then we did a little bit of dancing in the middle of the range for a while. Both of them went back up to the top of the range, and then both of them fell back to the bottom. Okay? Now, one thing to consider here is where we are right now, because I know some people are wondering, well, do we have to go all the way back down to the bottom of the range like we did over here? Look, we don't have to do anything. I mean, Ethereum doesn't have to do anything. It could stay at 3K for the next 5 years, and that could just be what it does. I don't think that's going to be what it does, but it doesn't have to do anything. We could shift this up to try to overlay the degree of the correction and see that it more or less has lined up I mean, basically the exact same way, right? And you can see this is kind of where we are. These are Heikin-Ashi candles, by the way. So the correction here is more or less lining up the exact same way. Now, to give you a brief history, I don't really talk a whole lot about my experience in prior market cycles, but to give you a brief history on this move, you know, I mean, this was back before, really before I even thought about market cycle theory or anything like that, because at this point we had really only had two cycles. One was pretty quick. The other one was lasted a little bit longer in 2013. And back in 2015, we saw Bitcoin. Let me actually pull up the Bitcoin chart to kind of explain what I was feeling back then. If we go look at Bitcoin back in 2015, we saw this move and it was like, all right, we're finally doing something. But this also came after this one as well, which came after this one, which came after this one. And it just felt like we kept getting just hammered back down one after another. And we went sideways for a while. And then Bitcoin went up and then it just came right back down. And I remember even over here, I still wasn't convinced. Like I wasn't convinced that this was about to occur for Bitcoin. And because I was not convinced, I certainly wasn't convinced that Ethereum back in December of 2016, which would have corresponded to this move by Bitcoin, I wasn't convinced that Ethereum was going to take off to, especially not $1,400. By the way, back then, you would have been labeled a moon boy for saying ETH could go to $100. Okay, if you actually go look at some of the old threads, I remember people talking about $100 ETH, and even I rolled my eyes, to be completely honest. Bitcoin was moving up during that time. Okay, late 2016. Ethereum, late 2016, was moving down. So there wasn't really a clear indication that there is going to be an explosive move coming. And in fact, I think at this point, a lot of people had given up hope. And I experienced this, right? I experienced that move by Ethereum. And I didn't play it perfectly. I know I didn't, but it was something that was really difficult to navigate back then, mainly because, there really was no telling where the cryptocurrency class was going. It's not like, what we know today think about what it would have been like before all these altcoins. There's still some altcoins back then, but not nearly as many. Before all these ICOs and IDOs, IEOs, all these different things, right? Before we had all of that stuff, the cryptocurrency asset class was a much simpler place, right? But anyways, late 2016, Ethereum was really starting to dump down. And it was before we saw this ICO craze, okay? Getting around the same time, but it was around the same time, but it was before that boom that we saw in 2017. And during this time, it was brutal because, again, as I've showed before, Ethereum just went sideways for a year. So it's easy for retail to lose hope, especially when you just get exhausted watching it go from the bottom of the range to the top, back down to the midpoint, back up to the top, back down to say the midpoint or near the low, back up to the top, and then back down. Retail gets exhausted during those moves. Okay, absolutely exhausted. And what's interesting is in the final rally, we actually broke through it. And so the only reason I'm showing this is not to say that it has to happen. I certainly don't expect it to happen in the exact same way. I don't expect this fractal to play out in the exact same way. I'll be honest, I don't think it's going to play out in the exact same way. But what I would say is that the same way that Ethereum investors have probably felt very discouraged over the last year, between $2,000 and $4,000, that's how we felt back in 2016, but between $7 to $14, right? The emotions are the same, okay? It's all relative, right? If you invested in Ethereum over here at, say, $14, and then it fell to $7, you're still down 50%. Even though the price was a lot lower than it is today, you're still down 50%. So if you bought ETH at 4,000, and then when it fell to 2,000, just like a week ago, or around 2,100, 2,200, you're still experiencing the same type of emotions. And so what I want people to be careful of before they just throw in the towel on Ethereum is this idea that you can have an asset like ETH go sideways for a year. And it doesn't mean that it's dead. It doesn't mean that the party's over. It just means that when you have an explosive rally where an asset goes up 40x, to go sideways for a year between say 2 to 4K it's not that unheard of, right? It's not strange to think that you could see something like that. Now, I mean, I've personally been fairly convinced for a long time, as you guys know, that we are in fact in a lengthened cycle. And one of the things I've mentioned before is that I think the cycle is going to go much further out than people think it's going to. Back in 2019, when we first started talking about this lengthened cycle, we said the end of 2022 would really be the earliest we could see it end. Okay, the end of 2022. And I personally think it could easily go well into 2023. So I want people to not look at this fractal with the idea that it has to play out, but look at it with the same lens that, hey, retail investors felt the exact same way as we did right now once upon a time, right? The emotions were the same, the prices were different, but the emotions were the same. So what we're looking for right now, what I'm looking for is, follow the fractal until it breaks, right? Like follow it until it breaks. And, what happens if we, consolidate for a little bit and then just start pushing higher? And if it were to continue to play out, then, maybe we are looking at new all-time highs by May, by June, by July, something like that. I don't know. I really don't know. But what I would like people to think about is that just because someone told you that ETH, has to go down because of some like 4-year cycle type thing, you should recognize that the emotions that retail investors are experiencing right now are the exact same emotions that we experienced back in 2016. And by the way, back in 2016, there was no really talk about a 4-year cycle back then. I'm not a believer in the 4-year cycle, I'll be completely honest. But back then, there definitely was no, I don't remember any people talking about the 4-year cycle because we hadn't experienced the 2017 peak yet. So, look, we'll see what happens here. Ethereum right now is trading for $3,000. If I'm being completely honest, and I want to be honest, right? I would prefer for us not to immediately go up. I would prefer to accumulate for a while longer between the 2 to 4K range. But with crypto, you get what you get, right? You take what you get and you move on, and then you just have to look for other opportunities. So we'll see what happens with ETH. Right now, we're trading for just around $3,000 or so. And we'll continue to follow this. I also wanted to show, if we're talking about the Ethereum ROI as measured from market cycle bottom, if you normalize it, this is what it looks like if you normalize it to say March 2020. So basically, the blue line is the first cycle, the green line is the second. You can see the blue line went up and then it just went sideways for a long time before it started another rally. The green line's gone up. And then the idea is just, why can't we go sideways for a while before we start another rally, right? Like, why is that such a bad thing? I don't think it is. I think it's the likely scenario. We've said that for the last year. But also do know that, when you're talking about a sideways move, if we're say drawing it from here, we're already coming up to about 300 days, depending on where you measure it from, of course. But, maybe 2 or 3 more months of this, right? 2 or 3 more months. Maybe let's be conservative and say maybe a bit longer if the fractal continues to play out. But look, I just want people to know that the emotions were all the same back then than they are today. There are no guarantees. Ethereum could go down. I don't have a crystal ball. I wish I did, but I don't. Back then, when Ethereum was trading for $14 and it dumped to $7, I thought we were just going to go back to $1, which is where we came from, but we didn't. We ended up rallying on up higher. And then what's interesting is that this level, the level we spent a long time at, was never revisited after that. We went up, but we never actually came back down to these levels. The highest we went here was on this wick was around $21, but we never actually visited those levels again. So, I don't know. Imagine a perfect world for us ETH holders, and suppose that it does something like this for a while, and then we break out to the upside and go into some, another rally. Maybe something like that. I don't know. And that 20K ETH, probably pushing it a little bit. Maybe it stops low. This is like the best case scenario, by the way, guys, right? And then if we start a bear market, it's certainly possible that we don't go back to these prices if we're able to actually move above them. So look, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you guys think about it. Do you think it's going to play out the same way that it played out in 2016, or do you think it's going to play out in a different way and maybe come back down? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We also do have the premium list into the cryptoverse.com. If you guys see these charts, we have all sorts of charts. You can see them over here on the left-hand side, all sorts of on-chain stuff for Ethereum, for Bitcoin, for a lot of other cryptocurrencies. We even have some derivative charts over here into the cryptoverse.com. And then finally, remember, if you want to pick up a new NFT, we have no retreat, no surrender. You can go pick it up. There are only 80 copies, so go pick one up if you are wanting to get an Into the Cryptoverse NFT, and we'll leave a link to that down in the description below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like the content. Give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.